With the release of Invincible Season 3, I was just coming off of the high of watching the latest, as of writing, episode, Invincible War. Alongside that, my friends and I have also been playing Marvel Rivals consistently, and with Season 2 on the brink, we began discussing the different heroes they could add into the next season. Though from what I've heard, it's teased to be the Hellfire Gala, but still, it was a lot of fun discussing what heroes they would choose. What roles do they have, what skills they would carry. So, with the final episode of Invincible Season 3 coming up, I had an idea. What if Invincible was in Marvel Rivals? So, as an artist, the first thing I wanted to do was to design Invincible. But to do that, I needed to decide his role first. You see, the roles matter a lot in Marvel Rivals, and depending on the role that you get, your visual design could completely change from what you expect. In Marvel Rivals, there's 3 different roles: Vanguard, which is tank, Duelist, DPS, and Strategist, support. Doctor Strange, who is usually the same size as characters like Iron Man, was beefed up significantly, and not only that, his cape size was dramatically increased since he's a Vanguard. In that way, he can cover his team more effectively. From what I see, however, Duelists and Strategists don't have that much differences in terms of sizes and builds. It really depends on their health pool and visual clarity instead. With that in mind, we can finally decide on Invincible's role. So to start with the obvious, what if Invincible was a Duelist? Now, majority will probably want this, considering everybody in my game always seems to pick DPS. But how can I blame them? They were built to get kills, and with a character set in a show as brutal as it is, it makes sense. Invincible has killed characters before, or at least thinks it. However, it felt kinda lackluster, and along with the lack of supports and tanks, I decided the DPS was a no-go. So, what if Invincible was a strategist instead? After all, characters you never expected to be strategists ended up becoming one. You'd think Loki or Rocket would be a DPS, but they managed to work their way around it by giving Loki his Mountain Dew Blast and Rocket his Revive, which makes sense sort of lore-wise. Not really so much the Bubbles Rocket shootouts, but I guess I can kinda imagine it. Some people thought it'd be pretty funny if there was a support who could punch their allies and heal them with their punches. Essentially what I'm saying is that healing could be done with a grain of salt in mind. However, it was tougher than I thought. While I had ideas on how Invincible could heal, it was kinda unfitting that Invincible was working as a support. Invincible seemed more like a defensive character. He helps out the innocent and defeats the evil. He doesn't enjoy killing and will stop those who try to hurt his friends. So in the end, it was clear to me what role he was really made for. Now, Marvel Rivals have done a lot of art for specific characters, but the one that I wanted to replicate and draw Invincible in was the main artwork that they show off for characters in their character page. Most artists usually chose this one as well, since it usually shows off the character's design, and there's a lot for me to compare and learn from, so I decided to take references from there. Firstly, I drew the thumbnails for what poses Mark could have. Learning art, I knew it was important for the character's silhouette to be recognizable. Not every character, but it's a good thing to keep in mind. I went for this pose, which kinda shows both confidence and strength with his arms like flexed, which I think fits Invincible well. Once I was done with the pose, I began drawing the concept art. The process I was going with was drawing him in the Marvel Rivals art style first, before actually changing up his design to better fit the universe. I sort of specialize in anime style, so it was kind of fun drawing this version, which is more semi-realistic. The version I wanted to bring into the game is the one from the show, from season 3. While I know he changed his suit, I still want to bring this version, since it's more iconic. Despite that, one of the first thing I wanted to change was his build. In the comic and in the show, he is pretty lean in terms of musculature, especially in comparison with his father Nolan and Conquest. But since he's going to be a Vanguard like Doctor Strange, I decided to pump him with some steroids to really beef him up. Next thing I did was to make sure his design is visually distinct from the other. In a hero shooter like Marvel Rivals, where ultimates would clutter up the entire screen, the moment you see a character, you should immediately know what character that is. Looking at you, Cloak and Dagger, and Invisible Woman. If Invincible isn't drawn or colored distinctly, it could look like an actual flying Iron Fist, and nobody wants that. So I decided to focus on the two main points which I think makes Mark's costume more distinct than the other, his goggles and his hero logo, the lowercase I. So I wanted to focus on those two items and really enhance it. Hopefully it worked. Otherwise, that should be everything that I changed up for now, so let's talk about his gameplay. Invincible will have 650 health and will be a flying character similar to that of Iron Man and Human Torch, how they both can land on the ground and walk around, but his playstyle will be more unique. I designed him mainly for creating space in the battlefield, so his moves incorporate knockback. His normal attack, held back strength, will be a 4-punch combo animation that shoots out a short burst of wind pressure, so that it could still be used from a short distance. Each punch deals 35 damage. His 4th punch would deal knockback and stun them for the duration they were knocked back for. This can be used to knock off an enemy to fall to their death, but should be enough for the user to fly back as Thor or Spider-Man. Speaking of flying, he can boost his flying by stretching his arms out with Dad's Teaching, flying at the same speed as Iron Man's boosted speed. Since his proportions aren't nearly as big as Hulk, he'll need another way to shield his teammates, so I gave him Cecil's holographic barrier. Similar to Mr. Fantastic and the Thing, Invincible will have a button below one of his teammates. Once pressed, he'll fly towards them, blocking with both of his arms, taking the incoming damage in a static position. In this state, he can't be moved or interrupted, and his animation can be cancelled. Damage incoming will be reduced to 50%, meaning he could potentially tank an ultimate and save his teammates. The one he's protecting receives an unbreakable light yellow shield made by Cecil and his team that lasts for 2 seconds. However, this button can be used on his enemies as well, activating Omni Clash. Invincible will fly towards the enemy at a fast and constant speed. Once reached, he'll throw a single heavy punch, dealing 45 damage, and the same knockback as his held back strength. However, he can be interrupted with Luna's Snowball or Invisible Woman's Force Field if they react quick enough. This can be used on Punisher's turret, which disables it, but can be used on deployables like Penny's Bots or Moon Knight's Ankh. Both Cecil's holographic barrier and Omni Clash work as one skill and have 3 charges. If Invincible is in the air and needs to get back on ground quick, he can use Seismic Slam. This allows him to fly directly downwards, landing, dealing 20 AoE damage with a large radius and a slight knockback. This can be used at any height, meaning even if he is at his lowest point, he can still use Seismic Slam. This could potentially be used to combo alongside held back strength, the cooldown being 10 seconds. Finally, after seeing his friends get hurt, he couldn't hold back any longer, unleashing his Viltrumite blood. His calm and composed posture changes to a battle-ready one instead. Wherever he goes, he leaves a bright yellow trail similar to that of Captain America. In that state, Invincible is invincible, and his damage increases by 20% for 10 seconds, meaning he can tank Punisher's turret, Penny's Mind, Iron Man's ultimate, both Storm and the Human Torch's combined ultimate. However, he is still vulnerable to Doctor Strange's ultimate, Wanda's ultimate, Winter Soldier's grab, and Penny's web. His Dad's Teaching animation will change to his arms flexed, ready for fight, instead of his arms stretched out. His held back strength animation will change to slices instead of punches. Cecil's holographic barrier animation will change to him blocking with just one hand instead of both arms. His Omni Clashes animation will change to him using his whole body to slam into the opponent instead of his arms. Seismic Slam won't have an animation change, but its radius will be bigger. All in all, Invincible's playstyle is meant to create space and to dive to complete objective. He's a good counter against flying characters and snipers, and with Cecil's holographic barrier, Invincible can return speedily to his team. With a second tank on his side, Invincible will truly be invincible. Despite that, I am not actually done with the gameplay just yet. I have one more surprise left, but let's try and finish the drawing side first before we get back onto the gameplay. Now that I've gotten the base design ready, I needed to know what to change to fit the art style Marvel Rivals have. Luckily, there's been videos that analyzes the Marvel Rivals' unique art style, which I played while drawing, so thank you. The video's link will be in the description. From what I've watched and what I've learned from them is that Marvel Rivals characters are designed with mostly the idea of futuristic over design. They sort of mix together the design of both the comics and their live action counterparts. It's too bad that the comic and the show's version of Invincible is relatively the same. Despite that, I managed to change up the design a bit more that you can see later on. Lore-wise, I think Iron Man or Mr. Fantastic just decided to upgrade his suit so that it doesn't get ripped as often as it does in the show. Though I have to say, I'm quite disappointed with the changes I made. Whilst coloring, I realized that I didn't make nearly as much changes compared to the likes of Spider-Man. Spider-Man was created with futuristic over-design in mind, and you can see that right away. However, while I did it as well, the changes I did weren't much at all. I really should have gone all out, but I was uncreative. Even though I was disappointed by my lack of effort, I still feel proud about some of the stuff I did, one of which being the head. I knew I wanted to make his hair more recognizable since it's more iconic, so I made it pop out more. I followed Iron Fist's design and color scheme for his skin and loosely based it off of him. Mark's face back in season 1 was longer, and I think that made him stand out more compared to the other heroes, so I did that. While I wasn't sure about Mark's stretched out mouth, Loki had a similar one, which reassured me. Skipping ahead, I tried to make his shoulder pad more pronounced to make his silhouette more unique, but I don't think I changed him more than I could have done. I also added padding to his fingers, inspired mainly by Insomniac's Spider-Man with the white padding, though I know he probably doesn't need it, and I know I did a weird design with the blocky padding, but I still kinda like it. Moving to his chest, I gave his eye logo a sharp edge at the top, just as a small detail so that it could be seen as a capital I instead if you like, but it's kind of just a random detail I decided to add. I also wanted the logo to pop up more when looking at his design as a whole, so I added a white outline inside of the eye, which I actually really like. It feels like something Marvel Rivals would actually do. Going to his legs, I changed his knee pad design to this. I've always liked the shape of these knee pads, inspired from Iron Man's one, I think. Plus, I think it kinda screams futuristic. And with some minor changes to the patterns and the shoes, base design was done. It didn't look too bad. I liked it, but right now it just looks like fan art of Invincible, not game art of Marvel Rivals. The first thing I added was the pure white light that every character seems to have on Invincible, always coming from the left. I also added the pink and blue light on the edges, and honestly it looks pretty convincing right there. But there was more. Some characters would have their right arm be covered in shadows, so I added that as well and added a small bit of shadings. Finally, I changed up his hue and saturation, fixed his big right arm, and adjusted his proportions. Honestly, the final result doesn't look too bad. I'm happy I drew this after days of debating it. I think if you had just one look at it, you'll be convinced for maybe 2 seconds, but I'm still very happy with the results, as long as it managed to trick someone. I later on edited him into the character roster, and yeah, it looks way more obvious than I thought, but it's possible. Going back to the surprise, originally, this is where the video would have ended, but since the game that we're discussing here is Marvel Rivals, we're missing the one important thing that makes Marvel Rival really unique. That is the team up. Now, you might be wondering who he could possibly team up with. Well, who else better to have a team up mechanic with other than the first person Invincible met in the Marvel Universe, Spider-Man. Now, even though Spider-Man already has 2 different team ups, other characters also has those, like Jeff. Most heroes in the future will most likely have more as well, so let's just get on with it. Firstly, I wanted to focus on fun team ups, not those like Jeff which just increases damage from Luna, but rather something like Wolverine and Hulk's fastball special, something more interactive. Instantly, my mind went immediately to the panel where Spider-Man web-slinged onto Invincible's back for a moment. Now, while it was a moment, I immediately knew that this scene was the scene that I wanted to capture their once multiversal friendship. When activating multiversal friendship, Spider-Man will web-zip immediately onto Invincible's back, holding onto them tightly, allowing them to travel together. In this state, Invincible can still do do everything else, but Spider-Man can only use his web shooters in this state. But Spider-Man can also use web shooters and pull enemies towards them or swing towards the enemy, leaving Invincible. If the enemies are pulled, Invincible and Spider-Man could easily destroy squishies, but that's 2 teammates away from point. In terms of utility and usefulness, it's very effective against flying enemies, but otherwise it's not too good. Spider-Man can do all that, but it'll be really fun, and that was the main point of this team up. When I was writing this down, I thought about how much fun that would actually be, just flying around as Invincible and having someone just climb on my back and just fighting alongside one another. And with that, we're finally done. Invincible's design and gameplay. Before I end out this video, I still had one more thing that I wanted to show, but I couldn't really do since I'm not a voice actor, and these were Invincible voice lines. Specifically, when the match is starting. At these moments, Invincible will talk to certain characters and interact with them, and I think it's one of the biggest points of the game which they could sell quite well. So I'll give you a few examples of how these would sound like. The first interaction would be Invincible with Spider-Man. Obviously, since they both interacted before, they'll just catch up and talk about how it's all about multiverses and time hopping. The next interaction he'll have is with Iron Man, where he'll stare at Iron Man thinking that he really resembles Robot, and Iron Man denying the fact that he will ever be something that ugly. The next lines involve Penny Parker, where Invincible thought that Penny was Peter's little sister, to which being corrected to talk about how awesome Penny really is, since most of his variants are actually quite murderous. The next line will have Invincible ask Bruce Banner whether or not he's the big scary green dude. Once confirmed that he is, he asks for help regarding his friend, Monster Girl, who has similar abilities to him. But with no way to confirm her abilities in person, Bruce Banner cannot help. And that should be everything regarding voice lines, and I hope you guys all enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making it and writing the script and really deciding his abilities. Once again, I'm not a pro, I don't know game development or anything. I kinda just wrote down stats that I thought fitted well with Invincible, and this took way longer than I expected. That season 3 final episode is already out and I already watched it. I don't think I'll create another video where I create another character in Marvel Rivals or anything similar in other games, since this was really like a one-time special where both of my interests aligned and I just wanted to do something special. So I hope you guys understand. Otherwise, that should be everything that I wanted to talk about. So thank you. See ya.